Greetings, and today I have another deck guide video for you guys. So before I get started, if you guys are new to the channel, I like to do Gwent videos. So if that's your guys' thing, please subscribe to the channel. And I've been actually extremely happy by the amount of people that have been coming to my stream saying that they're new to the game, they want to learn some decks and stuff like that. So that's actually pretty exciting to know that there are a lot of new people joining the community of Gwent. I'm relatively a small player myself. But I do stream on Twitch, which is how I was able to find most of you guys. So if you guys aren't following me on Twitch yet, I will leave a link down in the description below for my Twitch. So you guys should follow me there and you guys will know when I will be streaming. This video is going to get recorded, it's going to get uploaded tomorrow on Tuesday. Same day I'll be streaming my Mystic Echo run as well, because I am trying to get to pro rank. I just need 2 more wins, I think just 2 more wins before I get to pro rank. Well, 2 wins in a row, I should say. So yeah. Anyway, so today I'll be featuring a deck that I think I did a video on before, and this is the Soldier Nilfgaard deck. So I was trying it before and it wasn't really working for me, but now I've gained a more thorough understanding of how the deck truly works. And because I've seen a lot of this deck in the meta, so while I was playing with Mystic Echo Dwarves, I was facing quite a bit of Imperial formation decks. So I thought I'd give a shot on, making sort of my own version for it. And this deck was actually kind of interesting because depending on how you play it, I can see why it plays a big factor into into the high tier, into the high rankings of the meta, or in the high tier of the pro ladder, I should say. It is actually pretty powerful, and I'm just gonna sort of run down sort of how the deck works in my opinion. I've never played with this deck before. Well, I've played versions of this deck, but not I don't play it in the sort of same levels I did with the Mystic Echo Dwarves. But I've seen my opponents play this deck, and some of their strategies are the same, some are a bit different. But the thing with Nilfgaard is because its ability to sort of manipulate your opponent's deck, you are able to sort of add and remove cards to sort of fit to its liking. So if you guys notice, the popular cards of Stefan, Skellen, and Bribery do not appear in this deck list. I'm trying to focus it around soldiers, so here we go. Damien Delatour is a card that actually works pretty well with this deck, because Damien Delatour is a card that you probably might not want to play in the 3rd round unless you can combine it with Vilgefortz. But the thing with Vilgefortz is it only does let you do the summon, and the problem with most of these cards is unless you get a card like the Nilfgaardian Knight or the Ardfane Tortoise on the top of your deck, it's not really going to serve too much of a purpose. I guess you can do it as well for the Nausicaa Sergeant, but that might not do so well. Because of Damien Delatour's ability for you to play your leader twice. However, it is mostly just to get that 16-point boost if you can pull off Damien Delatour. So this card, it's not included in most deck lists that run this, but it never really hurts to get that extra 8 power if you can pull it off. Not to mention you can put a card on top of your deck. So for example, if you do decide to play Damien 2nd round, which is a truly viable option, then you can try putting perhaps, let's say, one of your bigger combo cards or one of your big cards for the 3rd round. So for example, if you're planning to go for a short round, you do have your 7 power cards to sort of do their thing, because for Nilfgaard faction, 7 power is actually pretty powerful. Obviously it's not as powerful as let's say the monster units like Griffins, the Pugo Boombreakers, Osril. They're just the best at generating a lot of power with 1 card. But this is strong enough for Nilfgaard. Next, you got Lethal Kingslayer. Lethal Kingslayer is good if you want to create extra engines. So again, if you want to make an extra Damien Delatour and get a tiny bit greedy, go right ahead. It can also be used to create yet another defender in Fion. So it'll be a 5 defender as opposed to a 7 because it will not get its ability. It just becomes a 5 power defender. I believe you get its 2 armor as well because it is the... No, it's just a copy. Okay. I'm not sure if it gets the armor. I've never actually tried it. But you know how Purify is very very dominant in most decks. So you'll see a lot of Purify in most decks. So your defenders will get exposed quite easily. So Lethal Kingslayer is sort of good to create that second defender. I think Syndicate and Nilfgaard are the only two factions which can do more than one Purify. I might be wrong, but you got the Imperial Diviners for Nilfgaard, and you got Adalbertus for Syndicate. We're just and Skellige. Skellige can do it too with as long as you play an Alchemy card, I believe. Grimace can use Purify as many times as you play Alchemy cards. So unless you come across that, getting that extra defender would be nice with Lethal Kingslayer. If not, you can always go for that extra order with Damien. Next is Ramon Turcanel. Ramon Turcanel is that really common first turn play. It makes sense. You're generating a lot of power. You'd probably use Ramon Turcanel to create, let's say, an extra Nilfgaardian Knight if you do get blue coined. Or the Ardfane Tortoise, really depends on your preference. You can also create another Ardfane Swordsman, which is pretty much the engine, the main engine of this deck is the Ardfane Crossbowmen. And it's not a bad idea to do it as well if you're looking to set up and play it on for the first round. Of course, having at 4 armor, it won't be as easy to sort of remove it from the field. But in terms of your opponent's ability to damage cards, it'll be relatively easy to remove 4 armor. But it's good because it protects from your power, which obviously that you're trying to generate. Next is Villager Forts. Again, you can make a case for even not having Villager Forts in here. You could even remove it. If you want, you can pull off that combo of Bribery plus Stefan Skellen, which is actually pretty powerful in case your opponent has a card, let's say like Royal Decree, Geralt Igni, cards like those that do really heavy damage. You use your opponent's main weapon against them if possible. So you can make that case, like you can switch Villager Forts and Letho for Stefan Skellen and Bribery. Letho just provides that good extra, support for engines, whereas Stefan Skellen is a separate engine in himself that supports one card, which is Bribery. You can support it with War Council and Assassination and Tourney Joust, but it's most likely you'll want to do it with Bribery. But Villager Forts is here. It can be used to remove a tall unit from your opponent's side of the field. I've had cases where Villager Forts remove, let's say if I was playing monsters, it removed my Eghern and it was forced me to play an Endrega Larva, which obviously its ability doesn't activate because it's summoned, not played, and that is actually quite annoying. So Villager Forts could serve as a sort of double-edged sword. Mostly pretty beneficial to you. Like you'll lose... Like if you get rid of a really tall card from your opponent and you get like a card that's like, let's say 5 points weaker, it's a pretty good point swing there. It's not that big of a point swing, but it is good enough, let's say if you're wanting to get rid of an engine or a tall unit or something like that. Next, you got Afon Hillergrand. This card is usually the target for Imperial Formation's no charge ability. So once it runs out of charges, you move a soldier to the top. It's probably going to be Afon Hillergrand. So this actually becomes a 13-point card as opposed to an 8 on the uses for its first time. Unfortunately, you can't use it again unless you put a Seer. Now, having a Seer is actually not such a bad idea. Like, you replace Villager Forts, you put in a Seer. Not a bad idea at all because if you have a Fawn, this actually makes it so that you can freely spend a Fawn in the first round to sort of get into the field for that extra tempo. But the bad news is if you want to use a Seer to bring him back into the deck, you have to be able to pull off Damien Delatour without having any problems, because if you run into problems with Damien Delatour, then we might have a problem with Afon being stuck in the deck, and in round 3 or something, if you choose to go to round 3 route, you end up having a dead Damien and Afon's in your deck and you accidentally draw into him. You essentially have a dead 5 card and you do not want that. While 5 power is still pretty decent, it is relatively slow, especially with the engine heavy meta that's happening right now. Next is Vrygef, and Vrygef kind of gives that sort of control aspect into this, because usually Vrygef, it's most of its power is going to come if you put it beside 2 Derlin soldiers. So these 2 already create duplicates of themselves upon deploy on their own. But if you combine it with Vrygef, you're pretty much creating 6 Derlin soldiers, which you can combine with Vreem for a very powerful 3-card combo for sort of a short round 3. Speaking of, I'm probably going to create, let's say, like ranking the best 3-card combos from each faction for the game. in case you guys want to know what the strongest short round game is for each of the factions, and could rank which one is like the most powerful, which is the weakest, etc. But that's a video for another day. But that's how Vrygef, that's what mostly Vrygef is for. You can use it for Nilfgaardian Knight. I don't see a reason why you would do so. You could use it for Ard Feint to get that extra 2 damage off. You do get to choose who you damage, which is cool. But other than that, Vrygef is mostly meant for the Daerlin soldier. So you do not want to use Vrygef unless you have these two out, which is very conditional. Which is very conditional for sure, but with an ability like Imperial Formation, where you can sort of manipulate which cards go on the top of your deck. You can even combine it with Arturius Vigo if you manage to get Daerlin soldiers as an option. There is also that one as well. Next, after Vrygef, you have Fayad, of course, which is the defender. You want him to protect our Damien Delatour, our Letho, if you choose to transform him into an engine, defending our Ard Feint Crossbowmen, etc. So, solid defender. Defenders have always been solid, but they've always invited the use of Purify nowadays, so chances are it's probably going to get Purified. The defenders almost see no play because, well, nowadays, like, I've seen decks where not a lot of defenders get played anymore because of Bion. Like, my Mystic Echo does not have Purify. And that's just because of, it's sort of the psychological thing where you have a lot of Purify already on the meta, so it's like, why bother putting a defender when I can just focus on generating points, so. But I'm having a defender here because Damien Delatour is just too valuable of a card for this. Next is War Council. War Council is good because you get, not only do you get to play a card from your top 3 cards, but you also get to see what you're gonna have. So if you ever wanted to manipulate it with Imperial Formation, you can do that as well. Yeah, War Council is good. And it also deck thins, so there's that as well. So other than that, War Council, it's a pretty decent card. It's a pretty cheap cost card as well. The reason why it doesn't sound like I'm a big fan of it, because there is a chance that you could get like 3 cards that are not going to be so beneficial to you. Like, this card's one of those, like, you kind of have to change up your game a little bit, which I think is counterintuitive for a deck like Nilfgaard, where they're very reliant on manipulating decks. They're sort of knowing what's coming in and out. Like cards like the Courier, Yennefer's Invocation, those are cards that give you information as to what is going to be on the deck without really affecting your play too much. With the War Council, when I say affecting your play, like directly affects your play on that turn, doesn't really give you an ability to sort of prepare for your next turn and stuff like that. It's almost like you have to think. This is one of those cards where you kind of have to think on the spot, simply because you don't, obviously you only get a choice of 3 cards out of the 15 in your deck, and if you didn't, assuming you didn't draw any extra cards before playing War Council. So yeah, but it's still a pretty good card. Like, it could help you find a piece that you were missing. So for example, if you had your Daerlin soldiers out and you had, let's say, Vygarth, but you were missing Vreemd, War Council could potentially draw you out Vreemd. Not guaranteed, of course, but it's a chance, so it's not too bad. Next, we got Swears. Swears is good here because he is a soldier and he can steal some pretty cheap engines. Like, I've seen him steal my Dwarven Mercenaries and Dwarven Berserkers many times. Because you don't often see cards like Renew in Nilfgaard, you're probably not going to see Swears played twice. So Swears is good for those sort of that one-time steal. So if that's the case, you want to steal a pretty good card that can sort of swing, can sort of turn the tide of battle in your favor. You do not want to use it when you're ahead by like 19 points, because I feel like that's a little bit too late. And it's almost hard when your opponent goes first in the 3rd round and they just manage to use their Mystic Echo and get all of their engines out. It's almost a game over at that point. But Swears is good for, again, stealing those engines. One less engine for your opponent can use against you, which is absolutely fine. Next is Arturius Vigo. Now, Arturius Vigo is mostly used for summoning Impera Brigades. But as you can see, Imperial Brigades do not make an appearance because I sort of sacrificed the deck thin for control. So I'm sort of giving that a shot. But Arturius Vigo is still good if you want an extra Ard Feint Crossbowman. Yes, it will be at 1 power, but it will still have that 2 armor. Better that your opponent uses a damage output card on Arcane Swordsman, like at 1 power versus a healthy one at 3 power and 2 armor, or even a 3 power and 4 armor if you plan on playing it with Ramon Turcanel. And yeah, it's good for that. You can also bring out another Nausicaa Sergeant. Again, your opponent will probably destroy these, which will make Arturius Vigo pretty weak. If that's the case, you can honestly make a replacement for Arturius Vigo, like the example I made. You can replace Arturius Vigo with a Seer if you want to pull off that double Imperial formation play with Damien de la Tour. You just put a Seer, you just use a Seer to put a Fawn back into the deck, and it should be fine. I believe it just gets shuffled in. It doesn't go to the top. Yeah, it just gets shuffled in. If it goes to the top, then it just comes out right away. It's pretty much an 11 for 8, which is, I think, pretty powerful. I might make that change myself personally, just because of how this deck works. I feel like this card is a bit too, I don't want to say risky, but you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 units. You have a 40% chance that either Daerlin Soldiers or Nausicaa or Ardfane Swordsman are going to come out, and even then it's not so good because the only strong card you really want that you're going to get out of this is the Daerlin Soldier, at least one that will benefit your play. So you essentially have a 20% chance of getting the card that gets the most value out of it, which is Daerlin Soldier. It's not likely. Next is Vreemed. Again, it's for that control aspect. If you're planning on swarming your field with Daerlin Soldiers, you kind of have Vreemed to just sort of give them all the power. Of course, your opponent will anticipate this once they notice that you have Vrygef. It is not likely that... The thing is, most of these decks in the meta now run Avalak. So Avalak will run that Biting Frost or Torrential Rain or Impenetrable Fog, and your Daerlins will just get wiped down one by one. So you want to be careful of that one as well. You do not want you don't want to spread them all in one row. Although in the case it might be better to spread it all in one row so that only one gets damaged at a time. You want to be careful with how you spread your Daerlin Soldiers, especially when you're up against weather, because 4 turns is a lot. It's a lot, and it can affect your weather. The good news is, though, it's predictable enough that most of them actually play weather on the first round, so that could almost be a sign to you saying that you should play your Daerlin Soldier, Vreemed, and Vrygef combos in the third round where they no longer have access to weather. Next is 1 unit of Assassination. It's good for removing engines. You have Swears for taking 1, you got Assassination for removing 1. Next is Nilfgaardian Knight. I'll just put the Nilfgaardian Knight and Ardfane Tortoise together because they both sort of serve the same purpose in that they're pretty tall cards for only a cheap cost of 5. Yes, they will boost your opponent up by 2 if under certain conditions. So for Nilfgaardian Knight, it's on Deploy. For the Tortoise, it's on Expose. So these are cards I normally play in the first round. Have your opponent deal with them, so be it. Let them get the benefit out of it. But it's just the first round. You can win the first round, but it doesn't mean you've won the game. And at least you have less cards to work with. And you're more likely to pull off your control combo and your ability to play Damien de la Tour. So there's kind of 3 things going on here. You have tall bronzes, you have control, and you have, well, I wouldn't say disruption, but like, you know, boost ability with Imperial Formation, Damien, Letho, yeah, etc. You kind of get the idea. Ardfane Crossbowmen is of course the engine. You can play this either round 1, round 2, or round 3. Round 1, if you plan to go the Bronze Knight route where you want to play all your 7s early on, Ardfane's Crossbowmen will still provide damage because they're soldiers. Round 2, if you choose to go the control route, same thing. You got Daerlin Soldiers, Vreemed, and Vrygef, which are all soldiers. And round 3, if you choose to play Swears, Damien, Ramon from the Imperial Formation, but that just gets summoned so it doesn't matter, Fion, etc. So they're all soldiers. Every round is going to have some soldier play in it. So the Ardfane Crossbowmen can be played at any time. Really depends on the situation that you find yourself in. Personally, I would try and play it. I would try to play one early, like in round 1. And I would try to play another one again when you're probably in round 3. Because that's just my personal opinion, because I'm a pretty conservative player. I try to use up all 3 rounds as best I could. Unless I know for a fact I can win in 2 rounds, then I will go for it. Next is Tourney Joust. Again, you got more sources of removal, which is great, but you can also use it to boost your own units up. Don't forget that. That's actually a pretty important info here, because again, you have engines that sort of benefit your opponent if they get damage. So you can use Tourney Joust to boost your own unit, especially if you don't find any of your opponent's cards powerful enough. Like, I see people use Tourney Joust to get rid of Endriga Larvas. Yes, I understand why they do that, but it's just way too slow, and especially if it's the first round, there's really no point in doing so. I would just use it to sort of like power up my Ardfane Crossbowmen, because if your Crossbowman, let's say for example, damages the Endriga Larva, well, yes, it does have 2 armor, you also have Swears to be able to steal it as well. So there's a couple ways where you can sort of mess with your opponent in that sense. So try not to take Tourney Joust for granted, because it is actually a decently powerful card. Next is Battle Preparation. I only have 1 unit of this, but you can make a case for switching 1 Nausicaa Sergeant for an extra Battle Preparation. Nausicaa Sergeant on its own, of course, is very slow, but most of these cards have deploy abilities, so Nausicaa Sergeants do get value over time. So Battle Preparation is good for restoring your Crossbowman's ability in case it does get exposed. You do not want that to happen with these, otherwise they lose their ability to gain, to be more powerful. But other than that, it should be fine. Again, you can make the case for 1 Nausicaa Sergeant, 2 Battle Preps. Depends on how much you really value your Crossbowmen and the odds of you thinking that they might be destroyed. So it's essentially a game of who do you value more, Nausicaa Sergeants or Ardfane Crossbowmen. Nausicaa Sergeants, there are quite a lot of deploys that you can use, but Ardfane Swordsmen, I think there are just more soldiers, so I'm choosing for the balance to have an extra Nausicaa Sergeant. But again, it's all up to you, depends on your gameplay. So that's sort of the deck list breakdown for the Soldier Nilfgaard deck. Let me know if what changes you guys would make to this deck, and of course leave a like if you guys enjoyed the video and subscribe for more Gwent content. Other than that, this is Zenzo signing out. I'll catch you guys in the next one.